Yo, welcome to another episode of the BJJ GOONS podcast. I'm your host, Tim, the Mushmaster Spriggs. And with me, as always, is my co-host.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's No New Nico Ball. Definitely not as awake as Tim is today, even though I'm on like my second coffee and I got like this extra strong Thai coffee. But yeah, hey, everybody. This week we got a special guest, as always, really. We've been having a lot of guests, but this week we have Ryan Jardine from Miami. He's actually a friend and coach of a new teammate that we have up here, Adekola Williams, who's been training in the garage with Tim. A while back, I interviewed Adekola for Favela Jiu-Jitsu. So if you haven't seen his interview, that's now on our IGTV, you should go check that out. But he talks a little bit about how he started training in Miami and why he says things like jits. And talks a little bit about Liberty City. So we decided to have his coach on. So today we have Ryan. What's up, Ryan?
Nothing, man. First, and foremost, thank you for giving Adekola the platform to share a little bit about his story. He's a super special kid and or young man now. And yeah, thanks for having me on to share a little bit more about what we're doing down here in Miami.
So, Ryan.
Yep.
What inspired you to begin Project Grapple? Can you explain for the audience what exactly you do?
Yeah, so currently we run a nonprofit here in Liberty City that works with the community to provide the kids with opportunities to participate in wrestling and jiu-jitsu. I think what we do that's maybe a little bit different, aside from offering access to two sports that generally the kids in the community and the community doesn't have a lot of access to, is really trying to draw the connection to take it beyond the mat, right, and develop some of those skills that are going to help our kids be successful no matter what they do. As far as inspiration or how I started, I guess like most things, it's a little complicated. I would say the probably initial idea or the initial seed started a long time ago. When I started training jiu-jitsu, there was a similar program like there are a ton in Brazil called Rocinha Project in Rio.
Mm-hmm.
And I met one of the people that was associated with it at a tournament here in the United States, and I was like, man, that's a really cool idea. We don't have anything like that in the US. So it was just like a seed, though. I was really interested in it. I ended up going to Brazil to train for a little bit over a year and got to see a little bit more about how some of those programs work in Brazil. And it kind of added a little bit of fuel to that initial idea of wow, that'd be something really cool to do in the United States. And then fast forward, I live in Miami. I work in Liberty City, and I'm an elementary school teacher. And so, I always had that thought in the back of my mind. And there were a couple kids who showed interest, primarily the one you spoke about earlier, Al. And he's really the thing that sparked it and kind of kicked it off in terms of me wanting to take the steps to bring something like that to the community here.
Interesting.
That's awesome. So you went to Rocinha or Project Rocinha in Rio, or you just heard about them and took it separate?
Yeah, it's actually a funny story. I actually was supposed to go. I was all lined up. I wanted to go help out in Rocinha and train there and see how the program was run. I was super interested. And about a month before I left, so I had my plane ticket and everything, and about a month before I left, they sent me, I was in communication with them, and they sent me an email where yo, we just lost our space. We don't have a space. Yep. So they're we don't have a space anymore. So as of right now, there's not really a place for you to come to, so then I went to plan B, and I ended up in Teresópolis.
Mm-hmm.
Just outside of Rio, and I trained there at Pitbull with Pedro Shumbo, Delson,
Oh,
and
wow.
Vita and stuff. So I ended up not going. But the original plan was, but yeah, they lost their spot, which is something I now that I've had my own program going on here, I can relate to. It's difficult to keep a spot. And like you're so dependent on that spot.
Yeah, a lot of people struggle. That's funny because I'm not sure. I know there is one project that's called like Hosinia Jiu-Jitsu, but Hosinia is a huge favela, so there could have been others. But I know there's like this guy, Alexandre Bebe, and he knows Master
That's
Lloyd.
him.
I think Master Lloyd went there and he knows Ted
Yeah,
Day.
that's him.
Yeah.
That's
So
it.
it's just it's such a small world. Like I was talking to him yesterday actually.
Oh, that's what's up.
Uh-huh.
That was a long time ago. That's like 2005.
Whoa.
Yeah.
2005 when I went.
He really wanted me to go there and film last time I was in Rio, but I try to go to as many social projects as I can, and I wasn't 100% sure who he was. So at first I was like, I don't want to go to Virginia because I already have stuff scheduled. But then he showed up. He was doing private lessons with Ted Day. He's like, oh, no, I'm the person that's been messaging you. I was like, oh, that's really dope, but I still didn't have time to go over there. But that's really awesome. They've been at it for
a long time, and I try to give them like, props whenever I can. Is like they've been doing something that a lot of people who've been doing stuff for a long time that maybe don't get like a ton of recognition or even realize that they inspire other people to like do similar things. But yeah, that they are definitely like the first like iterate, like the first little seed is definitely from them for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely like why I started Favela Jiu-Jitsu in the first place, and also like why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I don't know that many like social projects, jiu-jitsu social projects, or even programs that try to make the sport accessible. Because I know you work in schools. You said you were a teacher. I know some other people that try to want to kind of get into schools, but unless you have those connections with the schools, it can be kind of hard. So can you talk about like how like you initially started teaching in schools? Because I know at some point you had the relationship with Cyborg. Was that the initial thing that you started? Did you start kind of in schools? Did you start bringing Al or other kids out of schools? Like,
all right, so like initially it started like we said with Al, and it was just kind of one kid, him and his cousins, two of his cousins who lost a little bit of interest, but he was like from day one you could see he was someone who was like he was hooked before he even started. So it really began with taking kids out of the school to practice with me at Fight Sports here with Cyborg. And Al was kind of the first one, and it would really just be like after school, he would jump in the truck with me and we would go train, and then I would drop him off at home after practice. And that went on for a little while. And in the back of my mind, I was always kind of trying to figure out, all right, that's cool as one kid. I drive a regular cab pickup truck. I can't take that many kids with me. So like how can I make it more accessible? Something in the community.
Can you legally take any kids with you? Like, I mean, I know I've done this, but like when we talk about like really helping out and helping the community as a teacher, are you really supposed to be doing that, or is it?
Why you got to make it hot?
No, because I want people to understand we do this out of love. We do it by any means necessary, but sometimes I mean, I've taken kids to the mall, like the National Mall. I've taken kids on many field trips, and their parents have not known where they were.
So no, as a school teacher, you are told very explicitly not to do that. In his case, it's a little bit different in the sense that like his parents, his grandmother in particular, they gave me the okay. So, and if I'm really honest, like, I don't know, like, not to be like, it was something that was like important to me. And like, it wasn't like I was going behind behind his parents' back to take him without him knowing or anything. And it was a risk I was willing to take. I don't know how much of a risk it was or wasn't, but like, it wasn't like, I don't know. It wasn't going to stop me from doing it. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah.
But
makes
it
sense.
started with him, you know, like back to, you know, your original question, it really started with him. And then, you know, after a while with him, just like, how do I make it, you know, that's one kid, and he's a special kid, but like, ultimately, how do I bring it to a larger number of kids? And me being a school board employee here in Miami-Dade County, it made it way easier, you know, because you could just run it like technically as an after-school club. So, you know, it was not easy by any means, but had I not been a Miami-Dade County school employee, to get in the school would have been like significantly harder.
So how did you make that jump to like just working with Al and taking him out to a jiu-jitsu academy to starting a program in the school?
So it started with like, you know, I reached out, obviously I sat down, I had a meeting with my principal and told her what I wanted to do. She was awesome, super supportive, you know, loved the idea. And, you know, kind of started from there. We figured out, you know, in terms of like what kind of paperwork and everything we needed to fill out. And then I started to pass out applications at school. You know, I had a ton of kids interested. You know, they knew that I did jujitsu. They knew Al. And so a lot of kids, you know, were interested. So I passed out the applications. And once I passed out the applications, then it was like, all right, like you gave your word to these kids. Like they have an expectation that you're going to have a program. So now you better figure out how you're going to fund everything, like in terms of like buy the mats, how you're going to get the gis, like all that kind of stuff. So once I gave out the applications, it was kind of like, okay, you can't turn back now. You can't let them down. So start hustling, start asking, start making phone calls, start, you know, all that kind of stuff. So from there, it was just like, you know, like figure it out, hustle. So we got the space, you know, within the school, there was an empty classroom. We actually, you know, we kind of moved around in the school. They would shuffle us around. At times we were in the cafeteria, you know, and, you know, over time, eventually we got a classroom, an empty classroom where we could leave the mats kind of set up and leave the gis and stuff in there. But yeah, they shuffled us around the school, but yeah, we were in the school for that beginning part of Project Grapple.
What is the selection process like for the program? Are you letting every kid that's interested in? Do they need a specific GPA? How does that work?
No, the application process for me was always like just a way to kind of weed out to see who's serious. So I have in that space, I had a limited number of kids, right? Like I can't take all 50 kids. I don't feel like I was in a place to provide quality instruction and support and all the kind of wraparound stuff that goes with what I wanted to do for the program to like 50 kids. So I got it to, you know, I felt like 16 kids, right around that number was a good spot, was a good number. I didn't want to have to rely on, you know, when you start out, everybody's excited. Everybody's like, oh, I'll help you out. Like, I'll help teach. Like, I'll do this. But like at the end of the day, you know, it's not their thing. And like they have 9 to 5s and, you know, they might call you and say like, hey, my boss asked me to stay late at work. So my thing was always like, let's keep it at 16, something I know I can handle by myself and I can get like some experience doing it and figure things out and make sure that the product we're offering, you know, the quality that we're offering is like really high. And then later on in the future, you know, we can look at how to expand. So the application though was more about like just trying to figure out who's serious and who's not. So to be honest with you, most of the kids I targeted were not like the best students, you know, not like honor roll students. So it was less about the GPA and the content of the application than it was just about like, there were a bunch of things you had to do on the application. And I wanted to see which kids were serious enough to like go get all those things and go do all those things. I didn't care as much about what they actually put on the application as I cared about like the effort that they showed in jumping through all the hoops on the application. Because the worst thing that could happen when you have a limited number of spots or a resource like that is for me to take a kid and then him quit after a month. Because I had to tell somebody no. You know what I mean? Like I had more kids applied than spots. So that means I got to tell somebody no. So the last thing I want is for a kid to start and then quit. I want to make sure that like every kid that I choose is going to stick through. So it was just about trying to see like which kids, you know what I mean, were serious.
Interesting. So did they have to like go and get like a lot of things? Was it just like a normal application kind of process, like signatures, doctor's notes kind of things, or just normal?
Yeah. No, it was, I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like I know those kids. I've been a teacher or I was a teacher at the time. I've been a teacher for a minute at those school. And like in my mind, I already had the kids that I wanted, you know what I mean? That I thought would benefit from it, that I thought would really take to it. But the application had things like get a attendance printout from the school registrar, like get your attendance record printed out. Have a teacher write a recommendation about why she thinks you would benefit from the program. You know, you write a couple sentences about like, what is jiu-jitsu? Like, what are you signing up for? Because that's the other thing is like, they don't know what jiu-jitsu is. So I tell them like, oh, it's a jiu-jitsu club. And they're like, oh, it's karate. Is it? So I wanted to make sure they had at least a little bit of an idea of like what they're signing up for. You know what I mean?
It's like Cobra Kai.
Yeah, to not get in like 3 weeks and be like, yo, this is not, what is this? You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So it was just things like that. You know, it wasn't anything, you know, the attendance was a big one for me. Cause like I said, the last thing I want is for a kid to quit and attached to that, I don't want a kid who's absent, you know, every week, you know, 3 days a week. And then he has a spot on the team and he's not benefiting from it because he's not there or she's not there. You know, so the attendance was like a big thing. And early on, that was really the only thing that could get you kicked out of Project Grapple was like poor attendance.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I told the kids, I understand, like, we're all work in progress. You're going to mess up your kids. You're going to get in trouble. You're going to, you know, struggle in school and stuff. And like, there'll be consequences, but the only thing to get you kicked out of Project Grapple is attendance. Like, I need you here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's a great constant, you know, like it's always going to be there as long as you show up. That's beautiful. That's why I think a lot of kids need that. You know?
Yeah, I think it's easy. Like, I don't know, I see programs or I talk to people and they're like, oh, like that kid, you know, he did this or he did that. Like, he shouldn't be, you know, like he should be punished or he shouldn't be allowed to do it. Or, you know, I had teachers all the time come to me and be like, oh, he's in trouble in my class. Like, he can't do jiu-jitsu, you know, he can't do it. Or they would tell the kids like, oh, you're not going to be able to go to jiu-jitsu. And I said, like, hold up, like, don't threaten him with that because you're going to look silly because I'm not going to hold that end up. Like,
right.
if you're committed to working with kids, especially if you're committed to working with kids who are like going through things and kids who are like challenging and in challenging situations, like, you got to tell them like, yo, I'm committed to you. As long as you're committed to this and committed to getting better, like, I'm committed to you. So if I think that jiu-jitsu or wrestling and the program in general is a way for the kids to like improve for self-improvement, then like my punishment for that, for them having mistakes or stuff can't be like, oh, you're out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Your doctor wouldn't tell you like, you know, the punishment is like, you don't take your medicine. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
That's very true. I've had issues with that, like with one of the kids in Brazil. Like, he started smoking a lot of weed and like getting really violent at home, but like his father had passed and he had like a lot of issues, and like his sister was always like, kick him out. And I was like, well, if he's hitting you now and smoking weed and we kick him out, what do you think he's gonna do? Like, he's not gonna have any other friends. He's gonna be spending all of his time on the street smoking weed. I was like, this is all he has, and it's not making him more violent or aggressive like you think. He's got a lot of other stuff. I was like, it's the only place he has to go. It's the only people he has, you know, it's the only men in his life, really. You know, kicking them out doesn't really help. And I think now, even in schools, they have like restorative practices and restorative justice, and they're kind of, they're realizing that they've been like screwing up for years of just suspending kids and ostracizing and marginalizing them. For sure. I mean, Al is a good example of that, in that from the day I met him, like long before Project Grapple, I knew him because my first year teaching, his cousin was in my first grade class. And like, man, when I tell you, awesome kid, like from the time I met him, my first day at that school, he came up to me, he introduced himself, like, you know, like that was like one of the first kids at that school that I really bonded with. And this, like I said, this was before
years before Project Grapple. I think probably like 2 years or so before, even before Project Grapple, before he started doing jiu-jitsu. And he would always come in my class to like check on his cousin or after school to like help me out and whatnot. And around school though, like the way that, you know, other teachers or some teachers would talk about him about like, oh, he's a troublemaker and he did this or he did that. And I'll just be like, him? Like, no, not him. Like, man, he's awesome. Like, he helps me out. He's super respectful, like all these things. So I think there's a fine line that you got to walk of like, if you're really trying to help kids who need the help, like you got to give them some space. You know, they're kids. Like, you got to give them some space to make mistakes and use those mistakes as an opportunity to like teachable moment kind of thing. And like, had I listened to teachers early on with him and been like, run a super hard line of like, unless you're honor roll student, no referrals, you know, all this kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, the program looks good. I can post about like how 100% of my kids are on honor roll. And, but like in reality, those kids were on honor roll before I got them. Like, how much of the credit can I really take? And how much did those kids really need a program like mine? Now, you know, we had honor roll kids and like, they got something different out of the program. Like, they got maybe some confidence, you know, some things like that. But, you know, like, I just think you got to be careful about taking too hard of a stance and like giving the kids a little bit of room to grow within the program without just cutting them off and being like, no, you know what I mean? You're out.
Very true.
Very true. So you guys, you're a jiu-jitsu guy. You're a black belt under Cyborg, correct?
Yes.
Now, your students do jiu-jitsu. Like Al's a prime example, excellent grappler. But your students also excel at wrestling. How did that happen? Was that by design?
Not totally by design, although I will say like over the past 2 years, we've definitely shifted our focus more so to wrestling. And I'll explain a little bit why. So what ended up happening originally was like, we started with jiu-jitsu and, you know, we are, you know, a nonprofit, zero cost to the kids. So like every dollar we spend, we have to fundraise. And so, as you guys know, jiu-jitsu is very expensive sport. You
Really?
know what I mean? Yeah. And like for our kids, you know, or for us, you know, we have, you know, our kids want to compete. Like in Liberty City, I don't know how familiar you are or aren't, but like Liberty City is like the center of football. Like,
yeah. Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, we produce football talent. And so all my kids, all my boys, you know, I should say, we were like 50-50 boys and girls. But all my boys come from football. So we would practice all week and they'd be like, cool, who we fighting this weekend? And I'd be like, oh, like, it's not like that. And they're like, what do you mean it's not like that? Like, we're tired of beating each other up. You know, and I'd be like, okay, like there's tournaments, but they're not, you know, they're not very often. You know, you'd be lucky if you could get one once a month, once every other month, you know, down here in Florida, down in Miami. So we started with, you know, with the tournaments, but the kids were always like, hey, we want to compete more. We want to compete more. And a friend of mine who, you know, is a wrestler, he's like, man, take them to wrestling tournaments. It's like $20. It's double elimination. If they just want to get the experience and like the you know, the competition side of it, like they don't know the rules, but just tell them like take them down and let them up, and you know, it'll be great for them because they'll get the competition experience. You know, their stand-up game will improve, and you know, you'll keep them interested, because I felt like they were starting to lose interest because they were like, we work hard and we prepare, but like for what? Like just to beat the same, you know, there's 16 kids. It's not like we're a huge team. Maybe there's 2 kids that are about your weight. It's like you going against the same kid every day. So we started going to wrestling tournaments. And as far from a fundraising standpoint, it made way more sense because $20 a head is a lot different than 100. You know what I mean? We take 10 kids, 15 kids to a jiu-jitsu tournament, you're dropping $1,500. It's like, that's tough, you know? So it made a lot more sense financially. And then the kids started to like really like it and get like way more interested in it. So we slowly kind of made the, transition, and we went through a phase where we were like 50-50. And then we also just started to see, like, in terms of opportunities to compete regularly, wrestling was offering much more opportunities to compete regularly. And in terms of opportunities that wrestling could offer, whether that's, access to, high school, better high schools, or eventually, our goal, of course, is to get our kids in college. Wrestling just seemed like there was more that it had to offer our kids in terms of opportunities. So we kind of transitioned to focus a little bit more on wrestling for both financial reasons, but also for opportunities off the mat, kind of. Those are the things that kind of steered us in that direction.
Do you have a lot of kids or a record of kids that have been able to get wrestling scholarships and go to college with that?
So no, we're really young in terms of, we're coming up on 5 years, but our first group of kids was like third graders. So really our oldest kids are from that first group that, that like original 16, they're freshmen.
Oh, they're like Al, like it's Al.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're
running around
freshmen in high school though. So they're kids, we've picked up kids along the way. And so like we have a couple seniors right now that are in the program, and some older kids that are affiliated with the program, but nobody yet in college. Our big one will be Jaris, and he's a senior this year. And so he's one that we're really pushing to go to college. And like the scholarship thing is interesting. I know you and I kind of briefly spoke about it before. And so it's kind of, I'm careful to put too much emphasis on a scholarship per se, and have that become like the sole focus of like, hey, a scholarship, you know what I mean? Because for wrestling, I think it's a bonus. I think it's something that can help you get into schools, something that could help you pay for schools. Given the option though, I want my kids on an academic scholarship if I have the choice.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean? Because after the first year, if they get hurt or they decide they don't want to wrestle anymore, I mean, we see what's going on right now with college football and like the power dynamic. I don't want my kids to be in a situation where it's like, oh, you have to do this if you want to stay in school. So given the option, the thing that gives my kids the most power is an academic scholarship, because they, if they hurt themselves or they decide like, yo, I don't want to do this anymore, their education, their access to education is not tied to that. So given the option, you know what I mean? I like I prefer them to get an academic scholarship. That might not be realistic or be in the cards for all my kids, and wrestling can definitely be a bonus for them. But I try not to put too much emphasis on, scholarship for wrestling. It is something we talk about. It is something we work towards. But I saw some of those pitfalls with football, and the young kids being like, oh, I'm going to get a scholarship to go play football. And that kind of becoming like their whole thing, and them kind of losing sight of maybe some of the bigger picture and kind of what that power dynamic means when you're like all in just on football. And I think you can put yourself in a position to be, taken advantage of.
Yeah. I think it's really important just to be able to have that kind of conversation with kids, because a lot of kids, especially like when you think of people that don't have that male in their life to have those conversations, and really an academic scholarship is definitely the better choice. But for you to even pursue either a sports or an academic scholarship, you really have to change a child's belief system, because if they don't ever think that college is an option, if they only see like maybe basketball, drug dealing, or, being dead as options, college scholarships, whether it's wrestling, football, or academic, aren't even options. So just putting them in an environment where those are accessible doors and having conversations is really important. And somebody really telling you, I remember I applied to Georgetown. I could have gotten into Georgetown. No way in hell I was going to be able to afford to go to Georgetown. Not ever. Never, ever. Not one of my teachers was like, child, what are you doing? But, somebody's got to have those conversations with you, and it's important that you're there doing that.
The thing I would say though, like or in, conjunction with that in terms of wrestling and jiu-jitsu in as a whole, like those two sports. I mean, one of the reasons, aside from my own personal, like, the fact that I do jiu-jitsu, or that, I'm a black belt, and like, so obviously that's going to be, something that I gravitate towards. But in terms of scholarships and just opportunities in general, both when they're young, but also as they move to college, I mean, the things that we really liked about that was like size. You know what I mean? Like, I can take the smallest kid in the school or the biggest kid in the school, and they can be successful. Yes, we all know Spud Webbs and Muggsy Bogues, or, Darren Sproles, or whoever in football. Like, there are these outliers, but overwhelmingly, like, there are physical limitations to those sports, and like kind of prerequisites physically that you have to have that wrestling doesn't have. And the other thing I saw early on, especially in Liberty City, in the community there, and the communities around it, is like, our girls don't have access to like very much at all when it comes to extracurricular activities. If you're not the type of girl that wants to cheer or dance, if you don't want to cheer or dance, I mean, there's track, like, there's a little bit of track for youth, but outside of that, like, I just didn't see opportunities for the girls, like, to do something athletic outside of, cheer and dance. So I think, that was something else that always was important to us, and one of the reasons why we pushed so hard for jiu-jitsu, or why we felt like jiu-jitsu and wrestling were such good choices. And now moving on, I mean, we see right now in college, the opportunities for women's wrestling is like exploding, like all kinds of, scholarship opportunities and just opportunities to participate are exploding, and more and more high school, or more and more states are sanctioning women's wrestling as like an official high school sport. And so that's super exciting for us too. We talk about access just in general terms, but also access within those groups that we target that traditionally don't have access. Like, what about, your smaller kids? What about your, like I said, the girls? Like, there's not a lot for the girls to do, and individual sports as well. Like, there are not a lot of team sports in the neighborhood, but like, there are not a lot of individual sports.
That is very true. Like, when people say, like, when people are talking about defund police with everything that's been going on, I always like to try to throw in, like, part of that is really funding community organizations and other things, and giving kids other things to do. You have to fund something else. That money has to go somewhere.
For sure.
So
For sure.
have you?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Have you been in contact with the kids now? Like, it seems like every other day there's something in the news, very, like, highly upsetting. Like, are you in contact with them? Do you see how they're doing?
Yeah, so we meet. I mean, right now we've definitely been affected by everything going on in terms of like Corona and participation. We also lost, because of Corona, we lost, the spot that we were training before. But there's I would say the core group of kids, like, 5 to 10 kids that are like really at the core, 5 that are really like right now the heart of Project Grapple. We meet we're together every day. So we are traveling to try to get practice where we can get practice, try to get mat time where we can. There's a club about 45 minutes from us that we're really close with, that is very much like the owner, the guy who runs the club, is very like-minded as myself, and a big supporter of ours. So, he always opens his doors to us. So on the weekends, we try to get down there because it is a long drive during the week. We also are at the local park here, working out and just trying to stay in shape and do what we can outdoors in the meantime, while we wait to figure out what we're going to do about a space and just for everything to go with Corona. But I mean, you touched on everything going on right now in society, and that's something, those are conversations that we're having on a regular basis, like at the start or at the end of every practice, we're sitting around and kind of talking through some of those things going on. Our kids just started virtual school this week, and, there was an incident in the school on the chat in one of the classes that we had to talk about as a school that was, a little upsetting for some of our kids. And so, trying to use those things as like teachable moments and opportunities for the kids to kind of talk about what's going on and work their way through it and kind of, engage with what's going on and have a platform or have a group of people that they can talk to about what's going on and kind of, excuse me, where they see things going and how maybe they fit in to some of the changes that they want to see in society at large.
Very true.
What are some of the other obstacles that you ran into when you were running the program or while you run the program?
So, I mean, like, it's challenging, like, to run it. It's a huge a time commitment on my part. But I would say the largest right now, I guess the biggest obstacle I see is financial. And that has a lot to do with, the cost of running a program like that, whether it's, things like tournament entry, insurance for the kids, wrestling shoes, gis. When we were more jiu-jitsu heavy, Storm was awesome. Storm like gave us all the gis we asked for, like free of charge and everything. So that was like super helpful. But right now, I'm sorry, the biggest obstacle that we're kind of facing right now is a space. And with real estate in Miami being so expensive, that's kind of like our biggest challenge. I would say is like finances, and getting the money together to, get our own space, which is my main kind of motivation right now, or my main goal. The thing I'm really focused on right now is trying to get us our own space so that the service, or so that the work that we do with the community and with the kids can be more consistent. Because if you're always a guest somewhere, then you're kind of like, you're subject to them, like, hey, you can't come today, or you can't come today, or, all that kind of stuff. You can come at this time, but you can't come at this time. Yeah. And so right now, like, I really feel like for us to take our next logical step, or to really like, to take that next growth step, I think it really is going to involve us having our own standalone spot that can serve as like a hub in the community, not only for, practice and stuff like that, but for all kinds of stuff, to have a space in the community that could be used for multi-purpose, but that we have 100% control over.
Yeah, that's an awesome goal. Yeah, you said you have a nonprofit status?
Yep.
That would be amazing. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that would be amazing to see in the future.
Yeah, we're working on it. Like I said, I feel like we're at a point now where it's like you got to take a big swing. You got to take a big swing at it. Hold on, I got a guest. My son is 2, and he like doesn't let anything in this house happen. But we got to take a big swing and go for something big. Otherwise, it's like you just kind of like treading water or moving along, like and like at some point you know what I mean. You got to go big. Like you got to take a shot. So that's kind of where we're at right now. You know what I mean? And I'm kind of putting the things together, or putting the things in a row to like really go at something big and see if we can't take that step to really do something special with the community.
Awesome.
My last question is, how can the people watching support Project Grapple?
So, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways, right? Like, and I think about that all the time, and I think about the people that have supported us along the way, and it's been things as small as supporting those businesses or those companies. Sorry, man. He's a daddy's boy for sure. He's at like every practice. He's always, he's like the official mascot. But I think there's things from like supporting the people who support us. You know what I'm saying? Like, you guys took the time to invite me on to talk about the program. So like, hey, if you're not in a position to donate money, then like support the podcast. If you're if you're in town, like Richie Lewis, Rutgers alumni, wrestler, U23 world champ. He's someone who always supports us. If he's in town, always works with the kids, like helps us with fundraising and stuff like that. If you're in a position to like support him, any of the companies he's associated with, do a private with him, then do that. If you, there's a ways to support, the most obvious way is like financially. And that's our number one thing right now is like, we need money in order to get our own space. You can donate, through PayPal. You can donate personal check. There's a link in our Instagram bio.
Yeah, we'll drop all the links here too. We'll drop the links below.
Like you can go there and give money. That's like our primary thing. But like, if you're not in a position to give money, like you can help spread the word. You can share our page. You can share our page with people, who potentially are in a space to give money. Or you can support the people that support us. You know what I mean? Like, it's not all money. I think that's the real obvious way, but if you don't have money to give, then like there are other ways you can support too.
Yeah, I think that's really important because like, all of us need money. Most of us don't have it, but just taking a couple minutes to like sharing the post, because you post dope media too. It's not like you're posting whack stuff that nobody wants to not repost because it looks ugly. Like, so it's so easy just to go out to repost it on your story, and not just like repost a picture, like write something about it. Like, what is it? Why are you posting the picture? Like, say something nice. Be like, hey, they're doing like jiu-jitsu. I've gotten a lot of like money or donations or people reaching out from my friends, just posting other stuff and just putting people on. And on top of the fact that, like, I don't know if you get paid for any of this jiu-jitsu stuff, but I've been doing this since 2015 and got paid like damn near a cent, got accused of stealing several times. That shit make me feel so good when I see people sharing the work. Even if you ain't giving me money, it make me feel good inside. So, do that work. Go out and share Project Grapple, share like their students. It does help a lot.
I think like the message is hard, right? Like there are people out there that give money, you know what I mean? And that give money to other programs that are awesome too. There's a ton of awesome programs out there. There's a ton of people that have given money to us, too many to name, that have been like super generous. But part of it too is like getting it out there. I know there's people who are always looking to help out in the community, who are looking to help financially, but maybe don't know like which programs they should or shouldn't support. So I think, just helping to get the message out there, and even making connections. Like if you know somebody who you think might be interested in donating financially, like kind of making that connection, and every little bit helps too. You know what I mean? I had somebody this week, like, give $15, and like you might be like, oh, what's $15? But like, man, $15 is it all adds up. It all adds to that larger goal. And I think we did the math. Like for the year, for us to give like everything that we want to give to the kids, including our standalone space, including their uniform, their shoes, their insurance for the year, their USA Wrestling card, their tournament entry, like all that stuff, I think is like $1,500 for the year per kid. I think it comes out to like $125 a month. So like every little bit, you know what I mean? It helps. Adidas Wrestling is awesome. They give us a good discount when we buy equipment and stuff from them. So like, you give, $50 or something, that might be a pair of wrestling shoes for a kid. You know what I mean? And or for more than one kid, because they generally outgrow them before they wear them out. Yeah. So like we pass them down to the next kid and stuff, So I think there are a lot of ways to help. The one, the obvious one and the most pressing one is money. But if you're not in a position to give money, that doesn't mean that you can't, support the program in other ways, like you mentioned.
Yeah, right.
That's great. We will definitely share the links at the bottom. You have any more questions, Nico?
No, that's all I have. It was great.
Brian, thanks for coming on to the podcast. Thanks for doing all the great things that you're doing, especially in these times, for kids to have something to look forward to every day, something that can build confidence and is something that can improve their life, like get them a college degree or just give them something that makes them feel they can accomplish anything. I mean, that's a tremendous thing that you're doing. I commend you. Nico, where can everyone find you?
All right, make sure to follow me at Favela Jiu-Jitsu. That's my business page. My personal page is No New Nico, or you can just look me up at Nico Ball if you can't figure out how to spell no or new.
Ryan, where's the best way that people can check on Project Grapple?
So the Instagram page right now at Project Grapple is the best way to keep up with what's going on with Project Grapple. That's our main communication platform right now. There's a link in the bio that connects you to a documentary that was done. One of the documentaries that was done a little while ago. There's ways you can get involved there. Like if you want to donate, all the links and everything are in there. And yeah, make sure you give us a follow and check out the kids, man. You won't be disappointed. My kids are dope. My kids are the best.
Awesome. Yeah. And I don't know if Al told you, I know our former guest, my friend Pedro Munoz, like he was going to get in touch with you.
Yeah, he reached out for sure. He reached out for sure. And like, that's been something I like, I'll say, you know, before we wrap up, that I've been super inspired by, or is like giving me a ton of hope, is despite all the like nonsense and chaos and division and everything going on right now in our country in particular, man, the kind of like community and generosity and people reaching out and people supporting Project Grapple and the kids has been like really giving me hope. You know, people like him, King Mo, all kinds of people like reach out to me and are like, yo, we love what you're doing. You know, keep doing it. If there's any way I can help. And that's the thing too, is like people like him and all kinds of other guys from wrestling, MMA, from jiu-jitsu have offered to help out. Like, hey, I can come teach a seminar once you guys are open to help you raise money. Like there's ways to support programs like mine and other programs wherever you are. And it's been like super inspiring and giving me a lot of hope to see, despite what you see on TV and like division and all this stuff going on, like, yo, a lot of people reaching out, a lot of positivity around Project Grapple. And I think that should give all of us hope moving forward.
Yeah, for sure.
As always, you can find me at timspriggsbjj.com. Tim Spriggs on Instagram or Facebook. Thanks again, Ryan.
Cool. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
This has been the BJJ GOONS podcast. Peace.
All right. Stop the recording. Don't end.